Today's video is sponsored by Squarespace. After cycling through a few other 4x5 cameras during my journey into large format, there was one that quickly stood out as the perfect fit, and that is the Horseman 45FA. But it's not without its limitations, and it's a camera that's probably not for everyone, so I wanted to make this video just to share my experience so far, talk about some things I love, the features, some of the accessories and lenses I own, and then also point out a few shortcomings and some things to consider if you're interested in picking one of these up. So my journey into 4x5 was probably like a lot of other people, just taking some time to try and find the camera that suited me best. I started out with a Crown Graphic, which I actually quite enjoyed. It was just pretty old and well used. Then I went to an Intrepid, and then a brief stint with a Ghibellini, and then also used a Stenopica, which I reviewed on the channel. And there were things about all of those cameras that I liked, but in the end, I decided that a metal field camera is kind of what attracted me most. And I think for me, the biggest appeal with a metal field camera is that they just feel absolutely rock solid when they're set up. The one that I was after originally was the Toyo 45, and when I was doing research about that camera, I came across the Horseman. Didn't really know much about this. It's not talked about that much, but I was immediately attracted to it because of the size. With the 45FA, when you pick this up, the first thing you notice is just how small and compact it is. It's really nice, but it still has kind of everything you would hope for with a field camera. So graph lock style back, obviously you can use lots of common accessories, roll film backs, and then it has this nice little pop-up sunshade here, or sun hood, which actually works great as well. You can just pop that out of the way as well. It swings away if you want to check critical focus, or if you want to remove it, you can just pop it right off. So really nice. And then front of the camera here just has these two little wheels. These are for the focus track on the inside, but if you just spin those up, it unlocks the front bed, drops down, clicks into place, and then the front standard pulls out. So really quick to set up. Obviously everything's zeroed out, clicked in nice and solid, and also has kind of all the front movements that you would expect. Rise, tilt, swing, shift, things like that. I'll talk about those in detail in a little bit. The size is definitely one of the biggest benefits of the Horseman, but it's also the thing that brings with it some of these limitations, or causes some of these limitations. Everything is just a little bit more cramped and a little bit more tight to work with, dials, knobs, adjustments, and things like that. But for the work I do, I'm primarily shooting landscapes and hiking out and putting on a lot of mileage. So this thing fits in my pack and leaves a lot of room for lenses, accessories, and I can also bring video gear and stuff like that. So it's a huge, huge benefit. And then weight-wise, I think this is just under 4.5 pounds. So there's certainly wooden field cameras out there that I would assume are lighter, but for a metal field camera, very manageable. And I think a Toyo or a Wista is a couple pounds heavier than this. When it comes to build, the first thing that jumped out at me with the Horseman when I got my hands on it is just how high quality this feels. I think it's made out of aluminum alloy, super solid. Like I said, you drop that front bed down, it locks into place, pull out the front standard, everything's zeroed, like really confidence inspiring and quick to use. And then all of the movements nice and smooth and have these very noticeable zero positions that they click back into for all of them. And then even something like the front rise is geared. So nice and smooth and precise, and overall just feels like a high quality camera that you could put through a lot and it's gonna hold up to it. So next up, I wanna talk about movements, and this is one of the areas where people will say the Horseman falls short a little bit. And I'll start this section just by saying that I think what's most important when you're shopping for a large format camera is just to stop and think about what type of movements you even need. Just because a camera is more limited than another one doesn't mean that it's not going to be capable and still be able to meet the needs that you have. So as mentioned, on the front, you have everything you'd expect. So you have front rise, shift, swing, and tilt, and then you just drop the bed like you would for a wide angle lens. And if you tilt back, that kind of acts as fall. So for the work that I'm doing, mostly landscapes with some environmental portraits as well, this has been more than enough for me. Basically, I'm using a little bit of front tilt, some front rise, and then starting to play with swing a little bit. And when it comes to rear movements, this camera does have some, so it has rear tilt and rear swing, but this is where it gets a little bit different. So sure most of you know, what's quite common on most field cameras is that these movements are done individually. So if you wanted to tilt the rear, you would just loosen it off and you would tilt the rear standard. This Horseman has a system that's similar to, I think, the Linhof, where you have these 4 posts. So you loosen off these knobs and then the entire back of the camera pops out. You have some bellows extension there as well. And then you would basically do your movements that way. So it's still gonna work. I've never used the rear movements on this just because I don't need them, but I could see how it would just be a little bit more finicky as you have kind of the whole back floating and you're trying to do those precise movements. So just something to keep in mind if that's important to you. Back to the video in a second, just have to quickly talk about the sponsor of today's video, which is Squarespace. One of the things on my to-do list this year is to give my website a bit of a refresh and an update, and Squarespace is a really great tool to do just that. They have a wide range of nice, clean, professional looking templates to choose from, and then I just love the simplicity of it all. So, for example, currently putting together a gallery of some of my recent work from Wales, and just being able to click on images and drag to rearrange and reorder is really great when you're building out sequences. You can also add things like an online shop if you want to sell prints, zines, or photo books, and things like that. So check out squarespace.com today for your free trial, and when you're ready to launch, you can use my link below to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. So next up, I want to talk about lenses. This is another area that could be a potential problem for people. So Horseman has probably what is the smallest lens board for a 4x5 camera. This is 80mm by 80mm. And then it also has quite a small opening here for the lens on the front standard. So with these two things, you're basically limited to lenses using a Copal 0 or Copal 1 shutter, and then having a rear lens diameter no bigger than 65mm. So there's still quite a few options, but faster wide angle lenses or things like that, you're gonna run into issues. So I have a top core 150-5.6 Copal 0, no problems there. I have a Fuji 105-5.6 Copal 0, fits nice as well. But I did just buy this lens I'm pretty excited about. This is a Komura 152 3.5, and this is Copal 1, and you can see I've had to use an extended lens board just to help bring some of these dials and the shutter release out a bit. Otherwise they kind of bind up in this front standard here. And then I wasn't thinking about it when I bought this, but you can see the rear of the lens just clears the opening on the lens board, so I got lucky there. And then on top of that, the bellows draw on this camera is quite short. The focusing rail doesn't extend, so you're limited to, I think, a 210mm is the longest focal length, unless you use something like an extended lens board to get a little bit more reach out of that. Also, a couple more things to point out. The arms on the front bed are actually angled, so if you're using a wide angle lens and the front standard is set far back, you could still have clearance for all the movements, specifically something like swing. And then the top nameplate also flips up. So again, if you're using a wide angle, you'll have lots of room if you're using rise. So just these nice little well thought out details on the Horseman. Overall, the Horseman's just fine for my needs. 105 probably being the widest I'll ever go. And maybe at some point, I'll get a 210, but that's also the longest I could see myself going. So this is a camera that you have to get creative with, but there are options out there. For example, there's a Fuji 75mm 5.6, which is Copal 1, if you're after something like a fast wide. When it comes to accessories, lots of options available. Like I said before, graph lock back, so you're gonna be able to pick up like very common roll film holders. Horseman actually made a number of them. And then this rear design here is the same as on the Toyo. So you're actually able to fit Toyo accessories. For example, I bought this reflex viewer by Shenhao, and this is for a Toyo 45, but it just clips on and works perfectly. So that's really cool. But Horseman actually made a number of accessories. I think they have like binocular reflex viewers, which kind of is a huge contraption, but they have things like this. This is a universal zoom finder, and this clips on here on the top hot shoe, and then this has a number of different lenses that you can select from, which allows you to just frame up quite easily without having to get out the dark cloth or look through the ground glass itself. So I don't use this as much anymore now that I have this reflex viewer, but it is still a nice option. So as mentioned many times throughout this review, this isn't the most flexible camera, Not going to be for everyone, but for me, it's been the perfect fit. And that's because A, the size, and B, just the feel of it and how enjoyable it is to use. It feels like something that, is going to be able to withstand a lot of heavy use for a pretty long period of time. So if you're a large format photographer and you're after a compact option and you can work within the limitations, I would highly recommend the Horseman. I think it's a great camera and an excellent choice. But if you need something that has a lot of flexibility, that's going to allow you to throw anything at it, then this probably isn't the camera for you. And I would say go and grab a Chamonix or a Shenhao or one of the other endless options out there on the market. But for me, this is the camera I'll use. For the foreseeable future, I really can't see myself switching unless I get to a point where for some reason this can't do what I need it to do. But anyways, hope you enjoyed this look into the 45FA system and that it answers some of your questions. And other than that, just want to say thank you, and I'll see you next week.